Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Space Brothers GushCast. I am your host, LB, and joining me, as always, is my co host, CT.
That's me.
We missed a week last week due to a death in my family, but we are going to make up for it. We're going to do an episode this week and we're going to do an episode next week, and then we will figure out the schedule going through the winter. Should still be bi-weekly, but we may take little breaks for the holidays depending on what's going on. But otherwise, that is about it in terms of housekeeping.
We keep a clean house in that we don't really chat about anything.
Hmm.
Although technically, since we had a small, this is the smallest number of episodes, I had been considering it we haven't really talked much about the production of the show and some of the people behind it. But when it comes right down to it, there's not a whole lot going on. Uh, I mean, when you're really looking at an anime production, by and large, you're going to centralize around the director,
Uh-huh.
who's Ayumu Watanabe. Uh, and this is basically his first TV series direction. In 2012, he started doing Space Brothers. He also did Mysterious Girlfriend X, which I quite like and I hear is one of your favorites. Because you just adore spittle romance. Uh, I don't have a whole lot about his history was in the Raimon films, and there are a number of things after that which are interesting. I think the first time he caught the attention of your Sakuga folks. He directed After the Rain, uh, did a number of like Ace Attorney things, major, so some baseball things. In recent seasons, did Comey Can't Communicate, so that I'm waiting on more of. I've been following that manga from the beginning. So Summertime Rendering. I know he's doing Witch Hat Atelier next year, so that's a really good manga. So that should be interesting. I just don't have a whole lot that I feel can be conveyed through this particular work. And we've talked about that kind of thing before because the manga is such a strong storyboard, and because Space Brothers is so grounded, except for the occasional rocket launch,
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of adventuresome uh, directions to go in, as it were. I kind of wish that I knew someone who might have a bit more insight into it, but short of the occasional thing we talk about and some things that'll come up today, there's not a whole lot that I feel either qualified or perceptive enough to pick out of it. This one, this particular IP is all narrative for me. And obviously, there's a lot that I enjoy about the anime that I can't get from the manga, most notably the music and the voice acting. It doesn't feel like one of those. There are some people who are very wedded into the Sakuga sphere who would approach something like this and say, "Why is it anime?" As in, why didn't you just do a live action of it? And that seems to come up with a lot of other grounded things, your romances. So there's a bit more chance that your shoujos and joseis will end up with either a live action adaptation without anime, or a shortened anime coverage and more in live action. Some of them get live action in multiple different countries, which is amusing. And I could certainly see it. They did something live action for Space Brothers, but it's a fairly ignorable movie. And there are two. I feel like there are two answers for that kind of thing. The first is that it certainly didn't have to be, but they weren't making 99 episodes in a movie out of the live action. So the reason
Hmm.
it's anime to me is simply that it's covering more of the story. So I honestly don't care a whole lot which way it got to me. If they did this all as live action, I'd have been perfectly happy to watch that weekly as well. But I feel like that kind of thing doesn't happen very often. That's sort of an amusing side question. Do you think you would have been more or less likely to watch a Space Brothers if it was like this, but in live action?
Less likely because, especially in 2012, my opinion of live action manga was in the toilet. There was nothing that I had seen at that point that was a good live action adaptation of a manga series. I had not seen anything that was remotely good up until that point. Up,
Understandable.
up through that point, I should say.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of great live action adaptations, even still.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or you could even say, I don't watch all of them. So Chihaya Furu has a live action adaptation, but it's just three movies.
Hmm.
Uh, you could do something. I think Your Lie in April had a movie. Other things will get one or two or three movies to cover a whole lot of ground. Some of them are good. I enjoyed the Kenshin ones, but
I will say the live action Way of the House Husband TV series was vastly better than the
mhm,
anime adaptation.
that's interesting. But
Yes, if you have a chance, go out of your way to go watch that.
sometimes you get a series like Liar Game, which only got live action but
Uh
did it
huh.
very well. It wasn't necessarily the most faithful, but at the same time, it was very well handled, and it did enough. It was an actual TV show, and it had multiple seasons, so it wasn't just a well, here's all we could get funded for, and it doesn't do well enough, and we had no plans to go further. So that's all you get. Uh, so I get that, and certainly, as you say, at the time, I don't think it would have been likely for us to see it. It's only in recenter years that we've got a lot more live action anything, and a bunch of good stuff. Netflix has had a bunch of good series, but a lot of them aren't really adaptations necessarily, or aren't manga adaptations of something that we have out here. Excuse me. Um, so I feel like it would have been harder to notice, but I feel I guess the question is more if it was done equivalently well to what the anime is doing, would you connect more to it if it were an anime still, or if it were the same kind of show but done in live action? If it were doing the what they say, what the Sakuga critics of this might say is, why did they bother making an anime? Why is this an anime? So if it wasn't, I guess the question isn't the hypothetical usually live action is worse. It's if they were equivalent kinds of productions, would you still probably connect? better to an anime than you would to a live
It's
action
entirely
same production.
possible, but I mean, there was. It's just that anime is always so much more easily accessible. Live action series very rarely get streamed outside, especially in 2012. Live action series might as well have been coming from Mars.
Yeah. They'll get to Mars at some point, but I think they're aiming for the moon first. So
Hmm.
let's give Muta time. But yeah,
But yeah, back in 2012, even if this had been a live action series, I wouldn't have been able to see it. There's no way that anyone would have brought it over. I'm lucky. I feel fortunate that Crunchyroll brought over Space Brothers, the anime.
well, it feels like there was a lot less happening at the time, and they were
Hmm.
the only game in town, so they were bringing over everything. I'm
Yeah,
glad
yeah.
that they've continued to have it. So that's more to the point. I don't know what their licensing terms usually are. I wish everything was just sort of franned and they'd let money trickle in here and there, but
Hmm.
I feel like it'll just disappear at some point.
Yeah, at some point it's going to disappear into the Aniplex vault.
Of course, I own it multiple times on Blu-ray, so I'm not afraid
Yeah,
of my
I own
losing
it on
access to it.
DVD, Blu-ray, and I have the Japanese Blu-ray set, so
Hey, there you go.
I am set for those.
The funnier thing when I mentioned music before, it's another Watanabe who's doing the music, Toshiyuki, and while the director is someone who I can recognize from other projects, Space Brothers just being the first major project that he helmed, this guy is like Mothra movies and anime from the 80s like Bosco Adventure and mostly live action stuff for a Galactic Armored Fleet Majestic Prince. Literally, I know literally nothing else that he has done.
Sounds like
Uh,
something that would be up your alley, though.
Orchestration for the video game Shenmue. That's the that's as far as far as it gets. I fucking love the music. It's obviously great. I wish it were streaming so more people could get to it. But a lot of it is, wandering around the same major themes, and obviously a lot of it is just reinforced by what's getting used at which point in the episodes and you know what the narrative is doing at that time. That reinforces everything. It's the show that drives the music in, but I still really love the music, and I'm like, this guy does nothing else that I have any connection to or any particular interest in. Like the Mazinger Z Infinity, I guess 3D CG movie or something. I don't know. Maybe live action, maybe anime. But there's not a whole lot else that I can go on and attach anything to. There aren't other major stuff, and it makes me feel a little sad. I'm like, I should be able to talk about it more, but really the talking about it is talking about what happens during the episodes, and in this case, keeping an eye on the manga as well. And on that note, we got here a little episode 35 to start in on.
Yep, we are into the results of the third exam, and one by one, we find out who gets chosen to be an astronaut in training.
They haven't used the phrase ass can yet,
Not yet. They have not used ASCAN
but
yet.
I will spoil because that's one of my favorite words. astronaut candidates, ass cans. It's great. So going into episode 35, how did you, I guess, approach or appreciate the goings on in Kenji Land? We get to see
This
a lot
is,
more from there.
despite this episode being very, very gray, I enjoyed this episode, and I can recall watching this episode the first time, back in cold December 2012. Don't be impressed that I know that date. I'm just looking at it on my screen.
Okay.
Um but yeah, I remember watching this episode and thinking it's like, okay, so now we're going to find out who got chosen, and I remember being excited, and figured and I figured Kenji was going to get picked, so there was no big real shock there. Um
What you think the main characters of the series are going to continue with the series?
well, I mean, there was that little fake out at the end, but honestly, yeah. Yeah, we knew that Kenji was going to pass. I enjoyed this episode. I do think that Kenji is one of those people that if I knew him in real life, I might hate him a little bit. But in the series, he just comes across as very likable. Though I have to say that with how much traveling he was doing during his college years, he is either from money or he is seriously in debt right now.
Possibly, possibly. Yeah, you don't really get a picture of anyone's growing up life as opposed with the exception of course to Muta and Hibito whose
Uh
kid
huh.
forms are following us the whole time and whose parents we actually see doing a whole lot. But yeah, he's he's shown off quite a few places, and going to the Grand Canyon, wanting to go climb Everest. Don't worry, it's only the first 5,000 meters or whatever the heck it is. It's like just
Yeah, he doesn't climb Everest. He just goes to like the first base camp to get a picture.
yeah.
Not that I have any room to talk. It's not like I've gone anywhere close to Everest.
Yes, but I know any expedition, any trip out there is expensive. Maybe not quite so much from Japan. I know there are a lot of places that I think about as just being annoyingly expensive, like going to Hawaii for me. But I know that for uh, Japanese citizens going to Hawaii, it's much more. It feels much more like just a regular thing that they do.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I enjoyed the structure. It's as you say, kind of the fake out that they have because the end of last episode was very uh, nerve wracking, and all you got from him was saying, hi, hi, yes, uh, into the phone as it then just cut to the ED. And this episode starts with the same thing. You get the very tension filled background music. Excuse me. Uh, and you get to see a little bit from the JAXA perspective.
Uh huh.
Because Tsurumi, you know, excuse me, is sitting down because Hoshika is stuck in a meeting, which, as we later learn, is about the press conference later that day. Uh, So we've backtracked the tiniest bit, and you get a little bit of the home life, which is really just Fuka being the most child that ever did child. While she is singing somehow her ABCs, which I'm like, wait a minute, that's not translated. She's singing. She's literally singing them. She's not going e u a o or anything. I don't know if for Japanese toddlers they have their own version of it, but apparently the JK LLLP is fully accurate because that's exactly the kind of thing that
Apparently, Japanese
she.
toddlers get taught the English ABCs as well, just for giggles.
But that's exactly what she does in the manga. So it leads into. I enjoy that we're getting a lot of this from inside Kenji's head. Of course, in this case, it's his narrative for this episode. Uh, but you don't really get a whole lot of it. We're constantly inside of Muta's head, of course. He's the focused character for everything. I'm not sure we've ever heard a thought from one of them before. Probably in some circumstance, probably in the third exam while they're in the box, we likely got something where we were hearing what he was thinking because it was just him and the crew in the B arc. But you start with sort of a bookend framing because he thinks about his day to day, getting up at a particular time, you know, having breakfast or skipping breakfast, taking the early train to the suburbs, and then just you feel in the grayness of his uniform and the grayness of the day just that kind of doldrum that he's in the middle of. And in some ways, I think that may be the most realistic and empathetic thing that a lot of people can take from something like this, because it doesn't matter if you are going to a photochemistry lab or not. It doesn't really matter what your job is if your job is basically a daily grind, 8 years doing the same thing, being bored of the cafeteria food, but being basically unable to do anything else because that's the only place in town. You don't have grocery stores nearby. You're not in a neighborhood. You're basically imprisoned in your area, and you go there. You take transit there. You take transit out, and it's useful because he's got a steady job. He's obviously got a good enough salary. He's able to get home on time. It's functional because as we learn more, he and the missus get together in college, get married soon after, have their kid probably 4 or 5 years after getting married. Actually, how old is Fuka? 3? I forget. Uh, it seems like a fairly normal, homesteader track, and
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like is one of the things that a lot of Japanese working folk get stuck in, as well as all of us. I'm stuck in that kind of thing. It works, it functions, it's not inspiring. It's not. I go to the same office. I probably do a bit more different than Kenji's apt to as the course of my job, but I can feel all of the other bits about it going on. I don't wear a gray uniform either. So
Hmm.
there's that part.
I'm glad for that.
But it's one of those things. It's the adulting trap. You get to something, and then, things are good enough, things are improving, you at least have stability, but then you're trapped in that stability prison, as it were. Can you, if he's going to support Yuki at home, or her going through any other education while taking care of the kid, you got to do this. And we start with a frame of reference of he's been doing exactly the same thing for 8 years as part of his working life. Sounded like you were going to step in before, and I realized I've been yapping too long.
No, I was listening to you, but yeah, no, basically, this episode was, in some ways, it's very kind of inspiring to look at Kenji and him realizing that he is stuck in a rut, that and he doesn't want to be there, so he's willing to be there for the sake of his family until his wife points out the ad to be an astronaut and to try for something new. And foreshadowing, because Kenji finally gets his wish, he finally gets chosen, but we're talking more about this in about 20 or 30 episodes. I don't think that she realizes, his wife, I mean, I don't think she realizes how hard it's going to be, but she's willing to support him and she's willing to move to the United States and uproot her life for the sake of his dream, which I think is kind of amazing as well.
It's certainly not something you can really think about particularly. And of course, we don't know the logistics of all of it when he's in training, or if and when he gets to a mission. You could they could be separated overseas with visits. They could move to America.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, the manga, and this episode and the next one are going to be two of the ones where the anime is much better than the manga. And that's because they're single chapter to single episodes, which means there's a whole lot more that they added to the anime. So after Kenji has his first explaining his work situation and other stuff, it fades back out to Tsurumi talking to him on his phone and explaining the qualifications, how people were picked, were chosen. Uh, Amusingly, in the anime, it drones out to silence, and then you start hearing his thoughts about why is he, again with the stressful music, why is he being roundabout? Is all of this because I've been rejected? And he's kind of freaking out. The first time he looks over at Yuki in the manga, it's the scene where basically she has found the newspaper application and just says, "You've always wanted to go to space. Why don't you give it a try?" Which is absolutely not, where the anime goes, because you have the flashback to the college life and them. He's already been a few places, including the Grand Canyon. Uh, he meets and they, meet at odd times across the campus. I'm wondering if she's stalking him, of course, because it's like, ooh,
Hmm.
there's I'm just going to show up in his peripheral vision a bunch of times. They meet at class. They start doing things. What what one assumes is they have started going out at some point, but it may not even have happened until the confession, almost as it were, might have been the whole "What are you going to do on break?" And he tells her about wanting to go to Everest, and inviting her along. And in the anime, he gets to use the line, "It's better to, even if you're worried about it, it's better to try than not." And that, of course, seems to be the theme of this whole episode here. So we get a lot of scenes of them in college. Excuse me. And then we get we get not a training arc, we get a dating arc. We get flash cards of them going on various trips, and obviously being becoming encoupled in college. Uh, and you still are flashing a bit back and forth with the conversation with Surumi, but it's advancing a little bit at a time. You get him in his job, you know, what is it? They're conveyed a little bit more differently because what is it in the anime? I think it goes. Oop, sorry, I've lost my place. Next one,
Are you still there?
I am still here. My
Sorry.
I lost track of where there is an interesting way in which his consideration of his working life,
Okay, okay.
you know, the grade, it isn't what I thought. The person I imagined I'd become when I grew up was more out there, and that's manga, and
Hmm.
anime was a bit more true. Apologies. There we go. Is this is this really what I dreamed? It sort of was a little bit more just kind of introspective, philosophical. Is like, is this what I dreamed I would become?
Uh-huh.
And you can they're conveying the same thing, but you, the manga seems to try to connect a bunch of things more because you only get the one scene of him at work, and then he's like, the person I imagined I'd become was more out there. And we don't have any connective tissue from the trips to what is it? Trips to the Grand Canyon, trips to Everest. When they talk about their graduation trip as they're both graduating, and they're like, "Well, we've been to all of these places. I guess the next place we can go, the only other place we can go is space." So the anime has a through line, whereas the manga you just kind of have to remember, oh yeah, Kenji showed off, back in the first or second exams, showed off a bunch of places that he'd been, and you just have to remember that 60 some odd chapters ago, that's the kind of stuff that was revealed about him, as opposed to getting that as part of a
Mm.
narrative for the episode. And you don't just have Yuki saying, "Here, you always wanted to go to space," and I'm like, did he? I mean, it felt like it in some ways it felt like, well, he saw this opportunity and it seemed exciting, and it's similar to what he it's similar to the kind of experiences he chased when he was a young man, a younger man at This dude's still a young man. He ain't no gonna be 50 next year. That bastard. Uh, excuse me. But unlike Muta, I don't get the feeling from Kenji that space was a specific dream. Obviously, with
Mhm.
Muta and Hibito, they had an experience, and they're like, "Oh man, I have a feeling I'm going to become an astronaut. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go to the moon. Oh yeah, I'm going to go to Mars." And after that, we see them chasing in JAXA visits and everything else. Uh, all the way through, it just seems like for Kenji, it's an opportunity rather than a dream. At the very least, there's a bit more of it that seems like there was a larger interest from earlier on. Still not the kind of thing that we got from Muta and Hibito, but at the very least, there's more structure in the anime from it because the what is it the manga is basically racing through. He's describing his work. He's on the phone call. Tsurumi is going blah 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 instead of his voice fading out, which is funny in the
Mhm.
manga. Kenji's just thinking, "I want to go out there," and then there's a Tsurumi panel, blah blah blah. I want to leave, and then he does the end hang up of the phone, which is conveyed very well in the anime. When in the manga he's saying, I want to get out of there, out of that small corner of that huge facility, into a place that blows my ambivalence away. What is it? Okay. Whereas in the anime, it's I want to escape from the little corner of the big facility. I want to go somewhere I can feel free. And I almost feel like that was translated much more specifically for an American audience. Freedom.
Hmm. Mhm.
I sort of like the phrasing blowing your ambivalence away. But yes, then he gets to kind of pull the joke on the family because we get sort of the end of the phone call from that last episode where he's just going hi hi hi. In this case, he hangs up. He looks very serious, so she's pretty crestfallen, and even Fuka picks up on it and just wanders over to hug her mama because it feels like things are bad, and then he apologizes a few times, and he looks very overcome, emotional, and of course we've gotten much more dialogue from Kenji normally, and we've got a lot more emotion and passion. He's very, I don't want to say locked up normally. He's very
Mhm.
friendly. He just seems very polished. I think that makes sense. And of course, his hair does convey that. Two scenes of him, making sure his hair is firmly in place.
I
But
will say this episode was a little on the nose with the message it was trying to deliver of, break out of your shackles, do something new, chase your dreams. It was a little on the nose with it, but sometimes you need to be.
it's yeah. I mean, you can. I consider these episodes very much an emotional high point of the
Mhm.
series. Uh, and yeah, in any drama, you can summon the mellow, perhaps a bit too hard. I think it's not the usage of it so much as did you earn it? And this is the kind of thing we've been traveling with them for a while. And by giving, especially in the anime, by giving him so much extra time and journey through it, I think they deliver it, especially at the end, because he apologizes to his family. Sorry about this. It's going to be busy and I won't have as much time for you. So he breaks out into a smile, and Yuki realizes and breaks out into the smile. And then they're all just the the picturest, perfectest, smiling, laughing, happy family shot, and just sort of, hugging and swinging each other around and falling down. Again, a nice bit that the anime gets to play up, whereas you get like a reaction panel in the manga. But at the very end, we have the difference in weather from when he was describing his job to then, because he gets to imagine blowing into the atmosphere and wearing the bright blue JAXA uniform as the brilliant blue that melts right into the sky of today. And, you know, not only does that end the chapter, it ends the volume. So, in the manga, at the time, you would have had to wait for volume 8 to go any further, and it ends with
Hmm.
Kenji manning up.
Are
Ah,
we ready to move on to the next episode?
I think we are.
Alright, so next episode. I know this episode is either your favorite or one of your favorites.
I can't not make it my favorite. I think because again, this like I said before, this is something where the manga doesn't come anywhere close because it kind of has to sprint through the events of it, whereas the single manga chapter to single anime episode, there's a lot more that'll go on in the anime. They even have time for the scenes of JAXA and the scenes of Muta, who in each of these gets to start off the episode. It's kind of amusing framing. It's like Muta keeps getting to start and possibly finish episodes because he's just waiting for the call. He's like, did they forget about me? And mom is mocking with him. But obviously, this is Sarika's one, and we know about, her and her father and why she wanted to become an astronaut. But by and large, in the show, she's been given food related jokes almost the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time that I break out and see more about her. And yes, the obviously the heartstrings that this one can pull on are pretty friggin' serious. So what
Yeah, this is the episode of Sarika's, I'd say, her astronaut origin story. This is the episode where we really learn about her father and the illness that he starts to that he suffers from. So he asks Sarika to start the journal, and that's why she writes in such excruciating detail about what's going on every single day.
Yeah, there's an interesting line during that as well, because we've seen her already bringing, writing in her diary. We've seen her bring it to a grave site before and talking with her father. But there's a comment that she makes uh, as a kid. I don't know exactly. It feels like she was 8 or 9 during much of this. There's an indeterminate amount of time that passes
Uh
between
huh.
noticing his illness. There's at least one big set of seasons. So I feel like there's at least a year and a half that fast forwards during the course of this episode. But for an illness that's implied to have maybe an average survivability of about 3 years, I don't know if that much time passes through all of it. But when her father is finally hospitalized and he asks her to start writing this diary, which she composes as if she's writing letters to him, she says, "Fine, I'll do it as long as you're in the hospital." And obviously, he was not in the hospital as long as they would want. Uh, and you can see, all right, well, she had probably at least a year and a half of doing that kind of thing, and it just stayed meaningful for her that she did it throughout middle school, high school, obviously all the way through everything here. I kind of feel like a single campus notebook is not enough for a whole year's worth of stuff, considering she draws little pictures of Christmas trees in it and piles of broccoli on top of food when she wants to. I think
Draws
they're
little
cheating a
flip
little.
books, which I think is cute and clever.
Maybe maybe some days are just like she writes 3 lines, which is just her meals for the day and has nothing else to talk about. But that's fine. We know what's going on. But that's another thing where in the manga you just sort of see, the grandparents come and they chat about Circa and why she's why she goes to the grave instead of leaving the book by her shrine is because her mom read the journal once and she didn't like that, so now she brings it out, which is a
Yep.
little which is a little odd considering she then leaves it there for I'm not sure how long. Does she just drop it off and thinks that her visit is enough time for his spirit to read the whole journal?
I
Does
don't
she
know.
leave a
She
journal
says that
there for a whole year
she
and
drops it off and then she says, "I'll be back later to pick it up."
right. In the manga she's like, I'm taking my diary home. Next year you can read what happens after that.
Yeah.
So
Which is a little weird because you wouldn't think that her journal would survive being there for a year, even if she wraps it in plastic.
she wraps it in plastic. Plastic protects everything. We can't get rid of it. We are filled with microplastics, so it does everything. But so you find out first, as a little kid, she's been taking dance for a number of years. The episode, the chapter is called "The Dancing Astronaut." I can't recall if we had any inkling of that previously. This was obviously the thing that she enjoyed very much as a child. She was in some kind of, you know, performing, and not really a troupe, I'm sure, but they had recitals and stuff. So she took lessons. She enjoys dancing around. She's a kid with a whole lot of energy. She will suck down 2 Papicos at the same time. Can't take 2 Papicos. I can. Uh, but then after she before her father is diagnosed, she's just chatting with him. He shows her, you know, bits of algae and things, and says, so her father has an interest in space. He's like, I'm a pathologist, but so I kind of look at little universes like this mold spore over here, which she thinks looks like space. It's all neat and glowy and sparkly, like stars, I guess. So her father wants to go to space, and Serica's like, I'll go to space too. I'll be a dancing astronaut. And, it's a kid thing. So I recall when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut, was definitely one of them because space is cool. Wanted to be a policeman, wanted to be a fireman, wanted to be not a construction worker, I think, but someone who drove a dump truck. And my parents were like, "Well, how can you be all of those things? A job, takes time." And I decided that the way I would pull it off is on Monday I would be an astronaut, and on Tuesday. Needless to say, none of these happened. I did not really devote myself in Hibito-like fashion.
Yeah, well, just because you're a quitter.
Yep, that's true. So in the anime, there's a lot of time. You see when he falls for the first time. There's a little bit going on before he has to be hospitalized. When he's at the hospital, there are a lot of visits. There are a lot of things going on. There's some seasons that go by, and they spend. She dances a recital that was coming up for him in the hospital. They decorate it. There's a whole passel of emotional music playing during this episode. But in the manga, just as a comparison, they go directly from "my legs just gave out on me" to "Serica, your father is going to be hospitalized," uh, to "Dad, they can't cure you." I've I've done some research. I guess it's a rare disease. No one knows the cause. It proceeds so quickly in the manga, and you don't get sort of those spacer bits that you have in the anime where she walks in on her mother talking with the relatives, saying it's very serious, essentially saying he may never leave the hospital except in the one way you don't want to leave the hospital, which
Hmm.
is what causes her to go in and say, "Dad, they can't cure you," uh which he admits, but it causes her to go back and revisit his home office where she's been before, and obviously spent a lot of incidental father-daughter time because he'd be working and she'd just wander in and again suck down them poppycoes. But so she goes back in there and starts doing her own research, and it's sort of implied that there's some time spent where she's learning and developing determination to go with that, the very emotional scene. And she's like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to cure you." Huh? Then you're going to become a doctor? Didn't you want to be an astronaut? Mukaida-san is both a doctor and an astronaut. There's a lab inside the Kibo module on the ISS. You can do medical experiments that take advantage of zero gravity. You can make great protein crystals. You can research things like what caused brain disease better than on Earth. So I might be able to find a treatment in space, and maybe I can cure you. In the, in the anime, we actually see some stuff going on that might let you believe, oh, okay, she has learned this because she wanted to learn this. In the manga, she just knows it.
Hmm.
Now, maybe that implies she wanted to go to space, but it's literally like 2 pages from when she declared I'll go to space too, is her saying, "Dad, I'll cure you. I know about this astronaut. I know all of the things they can do on the Kibo module on the ISS." And I'm like, I don't believe you, kid. I do not believe you. But, of course, the progression is much the same. Where I guess there's a panel in the manga where she just says, "I'm studying up," and it's like, ah, I see. But then Pops says, I'll just have to stay alive until then. And then you get the infamous anime triple pan with the background going to white and Daddy's face going translucent. I guess he didn't last much longer after that.
Nope, I guess not.
And of course, you have her being as emotional as she's ever going to be. Just saying, I wish you could see me. I wish you could see me the moment I go up to space. So she doesn't get a phone call. She just reveals in here in the middle about crying about things about her father. And that's really the reason that I love this particular episode so much, because in they start in a number of ways and just travel through any number of emotions, and you are forced to cry in like 5 different ways with five different emotions, especially because right at the end it's just like tears of happiness for passing, getting the news. And she gets to bookend here. It's a bit more of a through line in the anime because there are more scenes with her eating the popicos, but I get the feeling that because it was something that was kind of a thing with her and her father, while she kept the diary, she may have not been enjoying this particular frozen snack because, well, excuse me, because it triggered too many memories. It seems like, at least from the way she's treating it, and by saying it, they taste exactly the same while she's remembering back in his office when she's eating them. It feels like she probably hasn't had these in a good 15, 20 years, and is now able to enjoy it and able to be gleeful about it. As she dances around again, which may itself be something she hasn't done quite so much for a while. But she's feeling that her particular dream, which interestingly started before, from a younger age, I mean, than both Hibito and Muta, if she decided to become a space because it seemed interesting. But then after that, she's like, well, going to I'm going to break this disease and I have to go to space to do it. So she kept that up and obviously kept laser focused on that. I think Hibito was revealed to be in training for 5 years, something like that. So maybe he made it through JAXA training a year before Serica does, from her chronological age. But that's what happens when you get a particular inspiration bug that bites deep.
But
checking
yeah,
checking
I mean, I
in
don't
for
have
notes here.
anything to add to that. This episode was really good, very enjoyable. I enjoyed the the origin story of Sarika. I enjoyed seeing her figure out, seeing how she figured out that she wanted to go into space. What I like about these episodes in particular is that the people who want to go to space the most have the no, I want to revise that before I say something stupid.
What?
I enjoy seeing their reasons for wanting to go to space. And when we get to the next episode, I think it's interesting that I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Mm.
I think it's interesting that in the next episode, when we get to Mizuguchi and his rejection from JAXA, he never really talks about why he wants to go to space. He's so hyper focused on the rejection and being so certain that he was going to pass. But he never really reveals why he wanted to go to space to begin with, which I think is an interesting contrast to the other people who do get chosen.
Yeah, his background was really just showing him succeeding in school and university. Obviously, it doesn't get a whole lot here, but they could have fitted in a chapter in the chapter for him if they wanted to. But it feels like because there's nothing given to it, it just kind of feels like, well, before I settle in and take this cushy, high paying job to do whatever I want, it seems pretty cool to go to space. And I feel he's probably chasing a bit of prestige from something like that you are unlikely to get unless you found a company that does something important. Even if he's a very successful, high paid office drone, there's a level of that's still all he's going to be at the end. His name won't be remembered. So he definitely is very prideful and boastful, and it feels like this was maybe just an unexpected opportunity that he ran across that he said, "Oh yeah, I can do that." Uh,
Yeah, I
so he
mean,
pursued it.
I know that there are some other characters who get rejected at this point who are going to come back later. I won't spoil who. Um, I'm kind of hoping that this is the last we see of Mizuguchi, though.
Well, you haven't read past in the manga, so you don't know. You don't know crap.
I know a little bit. I don't know a lot, but I'm hoping that this is the last we see of Mizuguchi and that he doesn't come back in some high ranking role
I
later
mean,
on because he kissed ass or something.
he comes back in the next episode. He's in the green room, but other than that, you mean
Yeah, other than that.
once he is now off screen, let him stay there. Well, yeah, you got the I'm blanking on his name. Tsuramian? No, not quite. The guy who wanted to conjecture about alien life forms and doing that stuff. Even with him, you at least got okay. The reason he wants to become an astronaut was his father was very prominent and tried out, and you can feel that it was coming through his family connections.
Uh huh.
Uh, you can feel with the others from the A from Muta and Serika's group, we at least understood Fukuda and Furuya a bit more because, with one of them, he's fascinated with space and rocketry. With the other one, as a kid, he just wanted to, excuse me, he wanted to be on an EVA and look down at the Earth and smile. So he had a dream which stuck with him, which I imagine he hasn't been pursuing. He just decided to go through the JAXA training opportunity the same way as some of the others. Nita, you don't really get a feeling as to why. So again, with some of these people, it may just be an opportunity that they were interested in enough and figured they might have the kind of skills that would land them that opportunity. And the
Mm
main characters are the only ones that we get the real drive from. And like I mentioned in the previous episode, even with Kenji, we can understand that he can be a bit fascinated with it because it's a it's a frontier that there's only one way to get to, and it's
Uh-huh.
beyond all of the other ones. I don't feel a particular space connection to him, excepting that once he got the opportunity and pursued it, he pursued it passionately. And it fits the reason that he was going to a bunch of places, but I don't get the sort of space lust that you had from Hibito and Muta and some of the others. And indeed, there is no scrap of that with within Mizoguchi. So the beginning of that episode, again, you get to have sort of a bookend kind of thing. Let's see. You start with a bit of Hibito and Muta stuff. Muta worrying about his luck again. You ruined the scene where he came up with exact change because you thought it was in that previous episode where he was concerned about his luck, but it was here. And a gift certificate had exact change. But I enjoy the Tsurumi and Hoshika episode, not episode, but scene at JAXA, which is the first time in the anime that it kind of matches an actual scene from the manga. All of the other ones were additions to episodes 35 and 36, adding a little bit, spacing out certain scenes. You had Tsurumi on the call, but you didn't have the sort of chatting and meetings and other stuff. So I enjoy that Hoshika picks up some forms and goes out. And the funny thing is when he says, excuse me, what does he say in the anime? I believe this should be said under the sky. And of course, I'm thinking about what he does with Muta and the scene with Mizoguchi where he's being dressed down effectively. Like, no,
Yeah.
Mizoguchi's just on the phone at his apartment. And what Hoshika actually meant is, I want to be under the sky. He's out in a park and talking to him. It's like, I feel like this should be under the sky. Not for the guy who failed, mind you. For me. I want sky. Which is funny. I did kind of enjoy that with Mizoguchi when he's going through the, why didn't I pass and other stuff. He's already prepared a bottle of wine
Well, I
for
mean, if I
himself.
were in his position, I'd want a bottle of alcohol handy no matter what the results were.
Right, but it was his celebratory thing, and then at the end he's just like, well, all right, fuck it, just open it anyway.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, the way that he speaks in his flashback scenes, it's like there must be some mistake. I was always top of the class every single time. Uh, Everyone relied on me. Everyone followed my instructions. No one ever had a different opinion. They let me handle everything, so I rose to the occasion. Like, good God, dude, chill out a little. And of course, that leads to why he fails. Hoshika believes he'll be a great leader and rise to the top, but you don't have the ability to rely on others. And even then, when he's thinking back, it's like there's that one guy who disagreed with me. Not before him, though, and he's thinking about Makabe. He's like, let's all work together. I never knew there were people like him. And in the anime, he's got an even jackassier thing. Talking about it, what is it? There must be some kind of mistake. Where was it? Oh yes, Kenji must have made it. That's the only way I can accept this. It's like he'd better have. that guy who I feuded with in that box, he'd better have made it, or that's the only way I can possibly, what is it, possibly accept this. It's similar in the manga, but not quite as he's more pouting. Makabe will pass. He'd better, or I'll be mad. But it's certainly similar. And of course, Muta has in the scenes where he's fretting about, he managed to somehow whack his head on a door frame or something, get wounded,
But he
and
did learn what his lucky symbols were for that day.
that is true. Oh
And
yeah, that
thanks to the little girl on the bicycle, he got chosen.
that of now this episode has two chapters. Uh, as part of it, the largely Mizuguchi one, and then the next one. But that's one thing that they inserted. There is a girl with a bicycle at the park at the end, but they didn't do the horoscope thing and the lucky thing, the girl with a pink bike. So they added that specifically for the
Well, I
anime,
think it
which
was a
I
good
found amusing.
addition. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep. Yes, it was neat, and it made a nice thing. It gave a quick aside at the end for him, sort of a laughing wink at us at home. But it's interesting to get not just flashes over to JAXA, but also now on the moon, because you just kind of have Hipito out during EVAs, and they talk about all of them jumping too much or walking too hard in the moon base and whacking their heads. So the
Which
captain
I can totally buy and believe.
totally buy that. But don't tell the press that every man on the moon has a bandage on his forehead.
Hmm.
And Damien's like, "Hey man, I'm unscathed. It's you jerks." Hibito goes, "Maybe they should tell the whole world. Then we can say you aren't a moonwalking astronaut until you have a bandage on your head," which was slightly different than in the anime. Again, it's more of those slight angling of the conversations, but I enjoy the transitions from Hibito to Muta now involve a bandage on their forehead.
Hmm. That was a good transition.
So he gets a call. He seems to be one of the last people getting called, as is
I'm pretty
Muta's
sure that
face.
he is the last.
Yeah, considering they come late to the press conference, but it's amusing because he picks up and he's freaking out, and then he's listening, then he hangs up, and it was very quick. So you're like, oh god, what happened? And his mom is asking, what are you doing? I'm going to the park, I guess. He said, you're in my neck of the woods. Let's hook up. And there's a lot of anime footage of Muta doing things when he's worried and contemplative. He ends up in a park around people a lot. You saw that when he was doing his job search at first, or between certain jacks arounds. And that seemed to be a particular motif that the anime picked up much more specifically. There's obviously a park here, but Muta's doing more the okay. It looks a bit more like what they've been uh, having him show up at, and he's playing around with the kids a bit more, so it feels like he's been more active in places like this. But then we get to have Best Girl Hoshika greeting him Muda recognizes him from the interviews, but until he gets prompted, he doesn't recognize him as that guy
Hmm.
with all the hair.
That's right. I used to have hair. It's like, yeah, dude. Thanks for the reminder.
Way to be an asshole, dude.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's how you remember me, the guy with the hair. I don't got no hair no more.
Hmm.
And yet the difference with him being afro in the anime and frizzy in the manga. But he does
But
like that.
and then we get to the press conference.
Yeah.
Press conference. I'm was very impressed that Muta was able to get through it without making any more of an, ass out of himself than he normally would.
Well, you have the theme in this one of when did you feel like it's real? Because during the car ride that he's taking with Hoshika and Harada, he still doesn't feel like it's real.
Uh-huh.
When he meets the failed candidates, who's I don't know why they were invited and just hanging out in the green room. That seems like a bit of a dick
Yeah,
move by
that seems like a little
Axeman.
bit of salt in the wound.
Just like why are they there? Were they all on the stage and then it's like, will the failed candidates please piss off? All right, we'll leave now. They're all crying. I mean, it's a little bit nice, I guess, to simply have a scene where those two people we know nothing about from Group C show up to get, you know, shuffled off. They have the ring or the hoop and get dragged off stage at this point. They're at least congratulatory. Hoshika's got to be kind of a dick again. He's like, I don't agree with their decision, but I would understand. All right, dude. But he at least smiles a bit at the end and encourages Muda to go on stage. And yes, you get the sort of fun parallel with the head bandages, and that is the level of sort of pratfalling for him during it because he's at that press conference. He wasn't really dressed up for it particular. It's not like they said, "Oh, by the way, dress up for a press conference." He just went out to the park and had on
Well, I mean, he's wearing a
slacks and
suit, so
he's
that's
yeah, exactly.
so it's something. It'd be better than what I would show up in. I'd be out
And
there in like jeans and a ratty t-shirt.
I enjoyed the scene at the end of 37 where Hoshika is holding out his hand again. They do a little bit of the okay, he's about to go on stage. Uh, Muta is still just sort of starstruck at that point. Uh, and when Hoshika is holding his hand out, Muta's like, "Oh, do you want to shake my hand again?" Because they enjoyed the handshakiest of handshakes back at the park. And he's like, "No, dude, your coat." Oh, and then he walks out on stage, fade to white, and applause. And I'm sort of left wondering if it's a dream state kind of thing, but we do get to write that. Just that point in the next episode, after the green room scene and after other stuff, he comes to the door, goes out on stage, and then he gets to see. I mean, he feels surprised, but I'm like, all of the people who are there, and who didn't make it because they're in the green room. So I'm pretty sure you can do math. You know who's on stage, but he's very glad to see them. They're glad to see him, and it's sort of an interesting structure because they don't just continue the press conference. They do a little bit of excuse me, phasing out and phasing back in. You get a little bit of, Nasuda doing his Nasuda stuff again. But even even Nita gets to give him a nice remark. But they sort of fade out to the party and then they fade back to other scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the extent of what goes on in many of these episodes as far as uh,
I did like the party after the press conference when they're all checking their text messages and Muta sees the 10 emails that he got from Yasan.
yes, no, I really like that because what is it? You've gone between a number of things, even him being cool out on the stage when everyone is at the party and they're saying I'm getting lots of texts from high school friends, my family, but it's just like people from my old job, Sharon, and 10 from Yasa. And Serica's like, what? What he had texted me as well, but not 10 times. And
I
of
did
course,
really like that. And
what
then I do
the
like
ones that
that
he's
basically the
reading are
contents
great.
of each email were just Yasan live tweeting to Muta.
I love that exactly. It's like, yeah, he sent them all during the press conference. What a lame answer. A monkey could have done better. And that is exactly the kind of thing that I would do. I mean, I do that in the Discord as I'm sort of live reading mangas. I'll snark at it as I'm going along, but
Hmm.
I would absolutely to a friend be watching something and just sort of nudging them. I might not text them because I don't know if they controlled their phone ringing, and you wouldn't want that to go off on stage. You're dumber than a monkey. You're the only one up there grinning like a fool. And then stop staring at Ito-san. Now the whole country knows. And his expression reading that is so glorious. And that too much better in the anime. Although the manga says, "Quit looking at her so much. The whole country is going to know, not does know." And again, it makes me wonder what the actual minds are going on. But then we get a live return. Furuya only gets to appear via text, but the old man shows up to greet everyone. So we have almost the whole group A there at the bar. And oh yeah, one one of the one of the notes that I took down at the beginning of episode 36 is, boy, Serika's grandpa sure looks like Fukuda. And that was the same thing here. And I'm like, I guess he's glad that she didn't say, hey, you remind me so much of my grandpa. That probably wouldn't be the most encouraging of remarks. But he does look very straight. Does look very, very similar. But I enjoy. It feels like a very much winning moment for that string of episodes.
Uh-huh.
We keep in touch, and Fukuda comes back to pour celebratory beer. But the
But
I don't know
most
the way.
importantly, the episode closes out with that 11th email from Yasan.
Yep, that being the name of the episode, the
Indeed.
11th male. But yeah, he sends it. Obviously, it's been a while since they had the press conference, so now he's being, you know, actually not a snarky jerk butt. Although he leads with a monkey picture, so
Yes.
that's good. So it's like, Oh, there's something important I forgot to say. Congratulations. The sealed box, when we had to choose two, you remember what I said? I already knew the two people I'm picking.
Mm-hmm.
It only makes sense to choose them. I was talking about Nita and you. Both of you made it through, and so did Ito-san. We're awesome. I'm getting fired up. Just you wait, Namba. I'll definitely make it to space. Which is, heartfelt congratulations of the whole team, but also kind of being that, they had a competitive friendship, as it were, in the box. And in this case, it's leading, not to him contrasting to Muta, who I think was largely ignoring a lot of what was going on with Hibito because that wasn't him.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't there. He wasn't doing the big brother thing. You could see that it would be easy for certain people to get discouraged, including Yasan, uh, and not. You can be congratulatory by ending it with "Now I'm getting fired up. I'll definitely make it to space," so you know that he's going to keep pursuing the same thing, and that's awesome. And also just that's what Muta ends things with because he's basically thinking, Hibito, when did you when did it really hit you that everything was real? When you got the call saying you'd made it at a press conference? For me, it was in the restroom at the party when I read the 11th mail my friend sent that night. Sorry, I'm looking at the manga
And I
part
think that's a
slightly.
really fun contrast between the start of the capsule arc and now, because Yasan back then said that he put Muta at the bottom of his list.
Wasn't it because he was too tall?
Yeah, something like that. But
And
yeah, he
so,
said he put him at the bottom of his list for qualified candidates, and now he is congratulating him.
and revealing that, at the end when they were ending the time they spent together in the capsule, that he'd made it, even with his weird Bruce Lee shouts
Yes.
and his dumb reading an American joke book. But it's the same sort of contrast that I love about Muta in general, where he's also feeling a lot and being very serious about it, but he's sporting his head wound. He just used the bathroom. He's like, that's when it hit me. I was on the pooper and I got another email from my friend, and that's what I knew it was real. It's the kind of comedically earnest bit that effectively he lives through so much and is obviously part of the author's humor style, but it comes across very heartfelt at the end, including and especially the comedic ridiculousness of the framing. So I love that kind of shit.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about with this set of episodes?
I don't think so. Let me quickly see any of my. Oh, there was one other manga line difference that was weird. Uh, because in the anime, when Hoshika is bringing Muta to the press conference, tells them, while they're going there, hey, you gotta walk tall. And he's like, oh yeah, I gotta walk tall. Uh, in the in the manga, he says, I have to carry myself like an astronaut. And he gets a bit of a serious look on his face. And that I felt took the scene in a little bit of stronger direction. But,
Hmm.
it's again just comparing the little bitty lines here and there. I don't know if there's anything much to say about the ED here. Are we at your favorite ED yet?
I don't really have a favorite ED. I have a favorite OP,
Uh,
but I don't really have a favorite ED.
hmm. Yeah, they do kind of meld together. The only one that I really that really hits me is the one that I mentioned last time,
Uh huh.
ED2, Angela Aki. I enjoy it in general, and also because it's an interesting contrast vis-a-vis Spice. They're good, but there aren't any of them that hit me. There are some series where an ED is just so strong, or an ED is so prominent in sort of OP ways that it just sits with me hard. And I agree that Space Brothers doesn't have that. OPs, though, it has three that I find particularly strong. But we're not there yet. We're
We
going
are
to talk
not
about
there yet.
OP4 next time. So you better be ready. I will allow OP4 to be your favorite because it's by Fuji Fabric. And they're cool. And it's one of the more imaginative ones. And it will start with the very next episode
Hmm.
we'll be doing, which is
So,
episode
which episodes are we
39.
covering next time?
39 through 45.
Got it. All right. And these next episodes um are
Just gonna say,
probably the most exciting of the series, so you'll want to check them out
yeah,
and join us next Sunday as we get back together to discuss them.
brace yourselves. There, this is definitely its own high point, not an emotional high point, but a different kind of one. So
Hmm.
a lot going
But
on.
all right, on that note, have a good night, everyone, and we'll talk to y'all next Sunday.
Good night, everyone. Join us later.